So, my brother's in the audience, and he can sort of confirm this. But I grew up with an overprotective mother. Clap your hands if you have an overprotective mother. All right, let me see if you're on the same level of overprotection as we are. So, when we were little, we were not allowed to play outside between the hours of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. because that was when the sun's rays were the strongest. And my mother, mind you, I am like 6 years old and my brother is 2. My mother's like, you can't play outside. You're going to get melanoma. Does anyone here know what melanoma is? Okay, it's like skin cancer. Yeah, my mother used to prevent us from going outside to play because she was afraid we would get skin cancer. We were also not allowed to bike outside of our court, so we just pulled laps like crazy. We'd have friends who would cross the street and be like, "Come over, let's go, let's go." And like we couldn't. Like we had one of those electric dog collars. Like we were the only people who were aware that there was a boundary there. So we just wouldn't cross the street. Um, so it was to the delight of my mother when in high school I started dating Grace. Grace was was my girlfriend. Uh, who knows? Um, for on and off for probably half my life. We met when I was about 15 years old. It was the summer between my sophomore year, or my freshman year and my sophomore year of high school. I thought it was awesome because, number one, ninth grade was the worst academic year of my life. It was crazy. I had a mustache. I was still this height. It was not that great. But I had recently, I'm going to brag a little bit, I had won like the world championship for like the world like tongue sudo like association, right? So I was like world champion. And then during the summer, I had to volunteer for like community service hours or something, moving targets at like the national archery tournament in Canton. I'm from Canton. That's where it happens. Love archery there and soccer. And she was like there, and we sort of met. And then, sophomore year rolls around. We like hung out a little bit. And then junior year, at some point, I decided that I didn't want to be single my entire life. And I ended up dating her. And by my mother's standards, Grace was probably the safest person that I could possibly date. This girl would only have her steak like well done to be sure that it was like completely devoid of any like bacteria and or nutrition and or taste. It was just charbroiled Cajun style. Her favorite drink was hot water. Because water's good for you and it's better when it's hot, I guess. Not tea, hot water. Um, and my friends and I would talk, and she was sort of the type of girl who, if when we were older and we'd go out to like the club or whatever, go dancing, she would be the girl holding the purses, because she was like super safe, super safe. Um, so that happened. We dated for like 4 years, like the last 2 years of high school, first 2 years of college. And then we sort of drifted apart because I went to Michigan State. I can say that here. This is okay. I can say I went to Michigan State over here. Okay. And she went over to the University of Michigan. And so there was kind of a little bit of long distance there, and it didn't really work out. And so ended my sophomore year, we sort of called it quits. So yeah, that was great. Like not great, but it was kind of rough because I did this girl for 4 years. She was like all I knew. So the rest of college goes by, and here's me, graceless, right? So like she's the safest person that like I know, and I am probably the most dangerous person you have just met. I have like dislocated shoulder injuries. I have this scar on my knuckle that I don't really know where I got from. I just remember coming to in an emergency room getting stitches. Yeah, I'm kind of out there. So at the end of college, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go to California for vacation. So I booked a flight out to San Francisco to spend some time with some cousins, chilled out for a little bit. And then by the end of my trip, I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna come back. I'm not coming back. So I canceled my return ticket uh, to Michigan. So I moved out to California, basically by going there for vacation and not coming back. And I used to joke with people out there. It's like, yeah, technically I'm still on vacation. So I went out there, canceled my return ticket. Was like, this is cool, whatever. I can live the rest of my life. And guess what happened? I bet you can't guess. I'm going to tell you because that's why I'm up here. So, lo and behold, through some like weird coincidence, and I haven't talked to her for 2 years. Grace had also ended up in the Bay Area working for a company in Silicon Valley. And we haven't spoken for like 2 years. And so my aunt, who is sort of like my mom and always thought that Grace was like the best thing that ever happened to this mess you see on stage, was like, oh yeah, awesome. Like you two should totally meet. Like it'll be amazing. And so my aunt booked like a lunch or something. And the night before, me and my cousin, who came out there with me, we decided that we would get like rip-roaring wasted out in San Francisco. And so the next morning rolls around, and then lunch rolls around, and here I am. We pull into the restaurant, and we sit down. This is this girl who is pretty much the love of my life, who I haven't seen in 2 years, who was always sort of like worried that I might do something crazy, and I am hung over to all hell. Like this is probably the second worst hangover. I'm not going to talk about that's another story. The first no, we're not going to do that. The second worst hangover I've ever experienced in my entire life, and she was not impressed. And so that wasn't really great. But long story short, we started things up again. It was really crazy because you ever watched like one of those Richard Linklater movies, like Before Sunset or Before Sunrise or Before Midnight? Right? We decided like, you know what? Like it was really bad how that first meeting went. So let's meet up. We met at a Starbucks and we sat at a Starbucks and we talked for 4 hours about like all the mistakes we made and like catching each other up in our lives and so on and so forth. And so we dated for like the 4 years, the rest of the years I was out there, because obviously I'm not there anymore. Thank you. And 2009 was the worst year of my life. And so what had happened was I was in grad school at San Francisco State University, and I got, I don't know, depressed. I was really disenchanted with like academia out there. I didn't know what I wanted to write my thesis on. And then in like a span of 8 months, I got bronchitis, pneumonia, swine flu, and then I tried to join the army. It was a really, really rough year. And it's sort of weird that this sort of relationship we're crafting here, because I feel comfortable telling you that, like, I remember laying in bed and looking at the bottle of codeine next to me and wondering how many it would take, because it was so bad. But the thing that got me through that was Grace. At that point, like, we were still dating very seriously, but then she had to take a job over in New Hampshire for a rotation or something, and I would call her every night at 6 o'clock, and she would just talk me down. I didn't end up joining the army. But what I did end up doing was I ended up moving back to Michigan. I sort of picked up my chips and realized that there was nothing more, or there wasn't really any more damage that I could do to myself out in California. So I decided to come on back. My brother was there. He flew out there, and we drove my tiny little Ford Focus that I could actually see in the parking lot back to Michigan. And Grace and I were still more or less together. But what I didn't realize was the toll that all this was taking on her. Because, I mean, here's this girl, U of M graduate. Not saying that EMU and Michigan State aren't great schools, right? But she's always been safe. She was an engineer. Like, she was pretty much all set. And I remember her telling me, like, you know, RJ, all I'm doing right now is waiting for you to get your life together. And that's something that I could never do when I was in California, and I couldn't do until I moved back here to Michigan. And so the last time, things have changed since I crafted this, but the last time that I actually spoke to her, we had this thing where we would, because we knew that it wasn't really going anywhere, but we could always talk each other back into like being together again. We could. It's hard. You've been together like 15 years. Like, what are you gonna do? So we had this thing where like, okay, if one of us calls, the other person doesn't have to pick up. And so my birthday a couple years ago, 3 years ago actually, is the last time I really talked to her. So this doesn't end great. She called me, and she texted me on birthday, and then I called her. That was one. And then I called her again. That was two. And I called her again. That was three. And then the ball was in her court, and she never got back to me. And I was okay with that. I was okay with that because it's not because I didn't love her anymore. It's not because like the distance was killing us, because I think we could have beat that. But I think for me, and the kind of person she was, the only way I knew how to keep her safe after her keeping me safe all these years was to let her go.